In the late 18th century, India witnessed a fierce clash between indigenous power and European imperialism. Among the bravest resistors stood Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore, who dared to defy the mighty British Empire. His rise signaled a new chapter of Indian resistance and ambition. Tipu Sultan was born in 1751 in Devanahalli, near Bangalore, as the eldest son of Hyder Ali, a soldier-turned-ruler. From a young age, he was exposed to court politics, warfare, and the shifting power balance between native kingdoms and colonial forces determined to dominate the subcontinent. Hyder Ali trained Tipu in military strategy, Persian, Arabic, and French, preparing him for a life of leadership. Tipu quickly displayed an aptitude for command and innovation, leading cavalry charges and overseeing defense systems with remarkable maturity, even in his teenage years. As Mysore's power grew under Hyder Ali, Tipu took part in campaigns against the Marathas and British. By age 17, he had already faced British forces in battle, earning a reputation for boldness and brilliance. His confidence and conviction in resisting colonial intrusion were forged on the battlefield. In 1782, Hyder Ali died, and Tipu succeeded him. He immediately took command of the kingdom's army and foreign affairs. Unlike many regional rulers, he modernized his forces, formed international alliances, and invested in rockets, fortifications, and naval power, readying Mysore for prolonged resistance. Tipu embraced both Islamic and Hindu traditions, earning support from diverse communities. He built temples, funded mosques, and promoted a merit-based administration. His policies revealed a ruler who valued knowledge, innovation, and unity, key elements of his strategic and ideological resistance to British domination. By the late 1780s, Tipu Sultan stood as one of the most formidable enemies the British had ever faced in India. His ambition, intelligence, and military innovations made him more than a regional ruler. He became a symbol of anti-colonial resistance long before the Indian independence movement began. As Tipu Sultan solidified power in Mysore, conflict with the British East India Company became inevitable. The company, hungry for territorial dominance, viewed Mysore's growing strength as a major threat. The 4 Anglo-Mysore Wars would define Tipu's legacy and test Britain's might in southern India. The First Anglo-Mysore War, 1767–1769, began under Hyder Ali but marked Tipu's debut as a rising commander. Tipu led daring campaigns against British forces, using swift cavalry raids and scorched-earth tactics, ultimately forcing the British into the humiliating Treaty of Madras in 1769. In the Second Anglo-Mysore War, 1780–1784, Tipu emerged as a key strategist. After the British broke their treaty obligations, Tipu and Hyder launched major offensives. Tipu's siege of British-held Mangalore and his father's death in 1782 pushed him to command the war effort directly. Tipu brilliantly negotiated with the French, who were also colonial rivals of the British. With French advisors and arms, Mysore's forces dealt punishing blows to British troops. In 1784, the Treaty of Mangalore ended the war, one of the rare treaties signed on equal terms by the British. Between wars, Tipu focused on strengthening Mysore's defenses. He developed iron-cased rockets, reorganized the military, and built alliances with the French, Afghans, and Ottomans. These preparations signaled that Mysore was far from defeated and would fight again with even greater intensity. Tipu's resistance made him the most feared Indian ruler in British circles. British officials described him as ambitious, dangerous, and restless, admiring his tactical genius but dreading his political goals, to expel the British entirely and create a powerful, independent Indian state under Mysorean leadership. The stage was now set for the Third Anglo-Mysore War. Tipu's defiance, coupled with British fears of French support and pan-Islamic alliances, would drive both sides into a larger and deadlier confrontation, one that would determine the future balance of power in southern India. The Third Anglo-Mysore War, 1790–1792, was Tipu Sultan's ultimate trial by fire. The British, allied with the Marathas and the Nizam of Hyderabad, launched a brutal campaign. But Tipu, known now as the Tiger of Mysore, struck back with defiance, daring, and unmatched military ingenuity. Tipu's use of Mysorean rockets terrified British forces. These iron-cased rockets could travel over a kilometer and explode mid-air. He integrated rocket brigades into his infantry, creating a formidable combination of shock and firepower that stunned even seasoned East India Company troops. Despite being outnumbered, Tipu's defensive warfare was brilliant. He used guerrilla tactics, flooded plains to slow enemy advances, and launched surprise counterattacks on supply lines. His deep knowledge of terrain and weather gave him critical advantages over the invading forces. Tipu's capital, Seringapatam, became a fortress of resistance. Surrounded by walls, water defenses, and artillery placements, it held firm against sieges. Tipu personally oversaw the defense, rallying his soldiers with speeches, rewards, and direct participation on the battlefield. But betrayal ran deep. The Nizam and Marathas, once allies, joined the British. Isolated, Tipu still refused to surrender. He wrote letters seeking aid from France, the Ottoman Empire, and Afghanistan, hoping for a pan-Islamic coalition to push back the colonial invaders. By 1792, facing a three-front assault, Tipu was forced into the Treaty of Seringapatam. He ceded half of his kingdom and gave 2 of his sons as hostages. Despite the humiliation, he immediately began rebuilding, determined to strike again and reclaim what was lost. Tipu Sultan's resistance during this war further cemented his legend. He had proven that colonial power could be resisted with innovation, strategy, and unyielding courage. The British now saw Tipu not as a regional obstacle, but as the single greatest threat to their rule in India. The Fourth Anglo-Mysore War in 1799 was Tipu Sultan's final and most desperate stand. After years of preparing for revenge, Tipu faced the full might of the British East India Company, now determined to end Mysore's resistance once and for all, no matter the cost. Tipu had rebuilt his army and refortified Seringapatam. He resumed diplomatic efforts, contacting Napoleon Bonaparte, the Afghans, and Ottomans. While France sent limited support, Tipu's dream of a grand anti-British alliance never materialized. Still, he stood firm, ready to fight until the end. The British, under General Harris and aided by Arthur Wellesley, later Duke of Wellington, invaded Mysore with 50,000 troops. They were supported again by the Marathas and Nizam, ensuring Tipu faced overwhelming numbers. His kingdom was surrounded from all sides. Tipu launched fierce resistance along the Kaveri River. His soldiers fought with rockets, muskets, and swords, inflicting heavy casualties. But the British steadily advanced, destroying towns and cutting off supply lines, pushing relentlessly toward the walls of Seringapatam, Mysore's final bastion. On May 4, 1799, the British stormed Seringapatam. Tipu refused to escape through secret tunnels. Instead, he joined the front lines, defending a city he loved. Surrounded and outnumbered, he fought until he was shot and killed near a gateway, sword in hand. His death shocked the subcontinent. The British looted Seringapatam, seizing immense treasure, art, and weapons. They buried Tipu hastily and placed a puppet ruler on Mysore's throne. With Tipu gone, resistance collapsed, and British control over southern India was solidified for generations. Tipu Sultan died as he lived, fighting imperialism head-on. His sacrifice became legend, inspiring future Indian freedom fighters. Even the British acknowledged his valor. To them, Tipu was not just an enemy but a worthy foe, feared, admired, and finally, eliminated through sheer might and betrayal. Tipu Sultan's death marked the end of Mysore's independence but ignited a legacy that endured across centuries. More than a warrior, he was a visionary ruler whose innovations in warfare, administration, and diplomacy made him one of the most remarkable figures in Indian and anti-colonial history. Tipu pioneered modern warfare in India. His use of iron-cased rockets influenced British military science, later inspiring Congreve rockets in Europe. He reformed military ranks, used uniforms, and emphasized discipline, laying foundations for organized Indian resistance long before nationalism formally emerged. He was also a progressive administrator. Tipu introduced a new calendar, coinage, and judicial reforms. His state maintained silk production, trade with foreign powers, and a strong navy. He taxed fairly, curbed corruption, and invested in infrastructure, setting an example of enlightened governance. Tipu's commitment to religious pluralism is often overlooked. Though a devout Muslim, he funded temples, protected Hindu priests, and employed non-Muslims in top positions. British propaganda painted him as intolerant to justify conquest, but contemporary records reveal a far more complex, inclusive ruler. Colonial narratives demonized Tipu after death. British artists portrayed him as a bloodthirsty tyrant, erasing his progressive achievements. Meanwhile, Indian poets, freedom fighters, and historians reclaimed him as a symbol of resistance, an icon of courage, self-sacrifice, and defiance against imperial rule. His memory inspired figures like Rani Lakshmibai, Bhagat Singh, and even Gandhi. Tipu's sword, robes, and personal library were taken to Britain, but his spirit remained in Indian folklore and nationalist movements. He became a martyr long before freedom fighter became a common term. Today, debates still surround Tipu's legacy, hero or oppressor, visionary or zealot. But history, when examined closely, reveals a man far ahead of his time. Tipu Sultan was not perfect, but he was fiercely independent, deeply strategic, and utterly unwilling to bow to colonial power. History often hinges on fragile moments. What if Tipu Sultan had won? If the Tiger of Mysore had defeated the British and secured his empire, India's colonial future may have looked radically different, altering not just subcontinental politics, but possibly even the fate of the British Empire. A Tipu victory in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War could have dismantled British influence in South India. Their defeat would demoralize allies like the Marathas and Nizam. Tipu could have reclaimed lost territories and emerged as a dominant force, changing the balance of power across the region. With French support and renewed alliances with the Ottomans or Afghans, Tipu might have led a coalition of Indian and Islamic states against European colonizers. His dream of a Pan-Asian resistance might have delayed or even prevented British colonial consolidation in India altogether. Mysore under Tipu's continued rule may have become a powerful, modernized state. His emphasis on technology, trade, and meritocratic administration could have positioned it as an industrial and scientific leader, possibly initiating an Indian renaissance in innovation far earlier than in actual history. The East India Company, humiliated by defeat, might have collapsed or been restrained by Parliament. Britain, weakened economically and politically, may have struggled to expand its global empire, changing the outcomes of future conflicts like the Opium Wars or even colonization in Africa. An independent Mysore could have become a beacon for freedom movements elsewhere in India. Tipu's example would embolden other rulers to resist imperialism. Instead of fragmented resistance, India might have seen a unified effort for sovereignty a century before 1947. While counterfactual, the scenario reveals Tipu Sultan's true historical weight. He was more than a regional king, he was a potential nation builder. Had he won, the Indian subcontinent might have followed a different, perhaps freer, destiny, one shaped by native strength, not colonial conquest. Thanks for watching The Forgotten Past. If you enjoyed the journey, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a hidden story or untold truth. New discoveries await. See you in the next video.